Doctor of Theology Edward Dutton published a video on his YouTube channel today, The Jolly Heretic, where he explained why we should not be, in his opinion, concerned with the possibility of some kind of elite takeover of society with the help of advanced robotics, artificial intelligence, etc. Notwithstanding, I am still concerned about that sort of thing when I look at the real physical economy, how things are moving. Wealth is being held by fewer and fewer hands, and the actual economic production is being centrally planned to a greater extent. Now, all of that could reverse for the reasons that Ed gives, but we shouldn't put all of our eggs in the basket that we're going to see a generalized systems collapse and there will not be some kind of hyper-competent elite group trying to capitalize on that situation. Ed seems to think that we all are in this together and we will all collapse to a state of barbarism. The cycle of civilization will keep going. There won't be some remnant elite group with the resources, strategies, networks necessary to establish some kind of top-down direct economy. That seems totally possible to me, but we shouldn't think about this in terms of absolutes. These are projections of the future, and the way we should think about the future is Bayesian analysis. We should project probabilities on the basis of the theories that we have, theories plural. We shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket theoretically either. It's okay to prefer a given theory, but you shouldn't just assume that your theoretical heuristics from your pet theory can be absolutized and used to project future trends without error. So I'm going to link that video in the description. I'd recommend watching that before you carry on. I'm going to address his specific arguments. I don't think they're very good. I do like his channel in a lot of ways. I don't dislike Ed. But in any case, the first argument is that if automation increases without end, more and more people will be pushed out of the job market. Unemployment will be so high that nobody will be able to purchase anything, nobody will have any money, and the entire system will simply collapse. The problem here is in assuming that our current intellectual paradigm of economic thought, capitalism, will persist into the future. If you read what elite thinkers are actually planning, they are planning a transition to a more highly centrally planned economic paradigm. Just because you don't have a proletariat consumer class does not mean that the people who actually own the mines, the refineries, the manufacturing facilities won't simply continue producing what they need in accordance with their evolutionary interests. They don't need people to buy their stuff if they already own the physical infrastructure they need. So basically it is extrapolating erroneously a paradigm of economic thought which is really not ubiquitous historically. It's not the only way economic activity can be organized. And there are places on Earth where that economic paradigm doesn't currently operate. There are monopolistic societies where basically the monarch does own everything de facto. So, I mean, 300 years ago, we had a feudal society where a small elite aristocracy owned basically everything, and they were able to directly employ the lower classes and sustain them through serfdom. But if you have robots occupying the serf position in a society like that, that population does not need to be sustained. Ed has Malthusian assumptions where population will simply keep increasing. Fertility rates are declining. Elite propaganda is part of that. Consumerist society directed by elites is part of that. And to think that it's not directed by elites, it just exposes ignorance of the music industry, ignorance of the film industry. These are cliques, often of a similar ethnic stock, who control what movies make it to the public, what music makes it to the public. All of this stuff is curated. So if Western culture leads to lower fertility rates, that is at least partly due to the decisions made by elites. There's also the factor of lowering sperm counts, and that does not seem to be letting up. The environmental pollutants, cultural pollutants put out by elites. Remember the industrial chemicals, agrochemicals that are leading to, and plastics, all of that stuff, phthalates, that are leading to lower sperm counts and lower fertility. That is huge corporations that are doing this, a handful of people. And the effect is to reduce the population of the proletariat. Meanwhile, the people at the top of the pyramid, who have the economic resources to avoid plastic containers, avoid GMO food, all of that, who can manage their environment because they have options, they will not see a decrease in their fertility. And that is how it's going. Ed talks about it like there's a generalized lowering of IQ across the spectrum. There's not. There are selective regimes in certain economic classes that are selecting for lower IQ. But among people who hold doctorates, fertility is actually higher. So we're not seeing a generalized decline in IQ and fertility. We're seeing a technocrat class, social engineering class, that is expanding and controlling things to a greater and greater extent. And we're seeing the rest of the population be suppressed reproductively. That's actually what's happening. So anyway, Ed says if intelligence just kept rising, then you could continually support a larger and larger population, but unfortunately we're getting dumber, so we can't do this. The population won't just get larger and larger. They will incrementally suppress the population. And there are agendas to that effect that you can read about in UN documents. Just pay attention to what the elites themselves are actually saying. And no, there's not a firm break between elites and everybody else, but access to elite institutions is limited. And you can draw a very discrete set around those who have attended the Bilderberg Conference or Davos or any of these things, who've been members of the CFR. You can draw a box around that class, the technocratic social engineering class. So it doesn't matter that we couldn't support this massive proletariat. They are going to get rid of the proletariat. They don't need us. If robots can do the basic work, they can simply eliminate us and also do gene therapy for themselves, do gene editing for themselves, advance AI as much as they can, advance it as far as they can, and directly control their economic lives. They don't need us. Okay, so yeah, I think it's ridiculous to think that if the working class can't continue to buy useless garbage, then the elites will go broke. The elites own the land, they own the mines, they own the oil fields, they own the actual stuff you need to build the society that we have. And they are also actively saying they're looking to scale back economic activity and control it more tightly, for the reasons of climate change and other excuses they give. But they are moving to a centrally planned global system. This is what they're doing already. So, yeah. The basic error in this first argument is extrapolating capitalist thought into a future where centrally planned models are already being employed and are already dominant. Like, capitalism didn't win as an economic model. Fascism won as an economic model. We have all been emulating the Germans since World War II. So the second argument is that he says elites won't be able to increase their IQs, or even if they could, with gene therapy, genetic engineering, AI, implants, whatever, they wouldn't have that religious belief that would impel them to value the group and value expansion and all of that. I don't know that the elites are unreligious. It seems that they do have rituals. Many of them do have rituals and value systems. And basically, I think this is a baseless claim that elites are necessarily part of the general individualistic, hedonistic culture that they themselves have projected. In evolutionary terms, you have a group that has the ability to indoctrinate another group. Just because the things that the other group are being indoctrinated with are antinatal, individualistic, hedonistic, does not mean that the indoctrinating group also holds those same values. Overall, there's a kind of implicit majoritarian thinking with Edward Dutton, where he thinks because we can see these large-scale trends, this is just how society is going generally. He doesn't think of the idea that there are breakaway groups that are conscious of these dynamics, that are engineering these dynamics, and which are moving according to values that they do not disclose to the rest of us. There are hints of the elite value system, though. And, you know, if you get into the history of Masonry, Kabbalah, the Western occult tradition, you can know all of that more in depth. So the third argument, enslavement through tech won't be maintained because the population is lowering its intelligence. We simply won't be able to maintain the technologies of control that we fear the elites will employ. And this would be a valid concern if they wanted to maintain society at this scale, but it looks like they're trying to scale back the population and scale back economic activity. So, yeah, there's also the factor that Pareto distributions are being increasingly exacerbated with computing technology, especially. All technology, higher technology, means basically a more extreme Pareto distribution, which means a smaller percentage of the population is able to do more of the work. In the information age, 1% of the population is doing effectively the work that 20% of the population used to do, because one hyper competent, super high IQ person who's an expert coder can script programs that effectively everyone else just carries out. You can offload cognitive labor onto a smaller elite class due to these information technologies that then can basically instrumentalize and train individual workers or automated systems, robots, etc. So again, this is a false majoritarian thinking where the general IQ is going down. Therefore, we won't be able to maintain the technology we currently have. But a fewer number of higher intelligence people are able to do more than they were able to do in the past. So that does not necessarily hold. Moreover, though, I don't think it's necessary for the elites to maintain the population. They can simply let us die off, continue pushing out chemicals that decrease our fertility, continue the antenatal propaganda that they have, etc. It's working. Fertility rates are still going down. Inbuilt limit to intelligence. This is his fourth argument. He's saying that as you become more intelligent, you become hypersensitive. And then that gets in the way of reproductive fitness. You have autistic traits. So the elites won't be able to continue increasing their intelligence. They'll become too weird and they won't like socializing and they won't be able to pick up girls or something. But that assumes an evolutionary paradigm like the one we're in. But that will not be the case. With gene editing, with artificial wombs, with the ability to generate eggs from stem cells, which we have now. Like, these are demonstrated technologies that, for ethical reasons, haven't been rapidly explored. But I would venture to guess that some billionaires are out there in their own private labs exploring this kind of technology. So even if even if you don't have the ability to go to a bar and pick up a girl, if you're smart enough and you have the economic resources, you can farm your genes out effectively. You can, I mean, even if you just have a lot of money, you can buy eggs on the market for like $30,000 and then pay some girl, like in a third world country, to bear the child. In vitro fertilization, pay someone to be the surrogate. By having $150,000, you can buy a child effectively. And if you have this vast economic power like the elites do, you can basically breed your own society ad libitum. So there's that. Like, he's assuming current economic and evolutionary paradigms when they are in the process of changing. So another aspect of this is he claims that the hypersensitivity would just continue to go on. But the way that evolution works is it filters the information that we compute, that we process. It decides what information is auxiliary, unnecessary, and we learn to tune that stuff out. So at the margins, at the extreme high end of the IQ of a species, pushing it a little bit further may result in this hyperstimulation. But as the population shifts towards that higher IQ mean, the selective pressures, assuming a conventional evolutionary paradigm, would lead to selective hypersensitivity, where the sensitivities which equate to fitness payoffs are maintained, and the hypersensitivities which are antithetical to fitness are selected out, made subconscious, made less of an issue for individual decision making. So those are two counter arguments. Yeah. The last argument is patently sophistical. It is basically, is it more likely that our civilization is unique, or that we, like every other civilization, are going through a rise and a fall, and we're simply going to go through a collapse? Well, he asks, are we part of the Malthusian cycle? And arguably, no, we're not. I've read Malthus, and it's actually very good reasoning. I think obviously Darwin was influenced by Malthus. I've read both Darwin and Malthus, and Malthus talks about this geometric increase in population and the arithmetic increase in productivity. But that's not the situation. We don't have a geometric increase in population. We're out of the Malthusian cycle. If there's lower fertility due to chemical reasons or cultural reasons, that's not a Malthusian cycle anymore. We're in something different. We could be still in like a Spenglerian civilizational cycle, but that doesn't matter when it comes to the issue of elite control. Because even if Western civilization collapses, the elites, the globalists, will still have their resources because they are international. They have their eggs in all baskets. They designed the banking system. They designed our economic paradigm for their benefit, and a handful of families have been reaping the rewards and rent-seeking off the rest of us. The question isn't whether elites will take over society. The issue is that they already did hundreds of years ago, and we were always their slaves. When we were serfs, when they changed their economic paradigms to be more efficient, when we were a proletariat working class, they always get a cut of what we do. And that's our current situation. The people who have billions of dollars, who have bunkers under their houses, who have 30-year food supplies, who own thousands, tens of thousands of acres of land, who could just build cities and populate them with their own progeny, by buying up eggs on the market or making eggs. Like, the possibilities that this class of people have are enormous. And most of us are not aware of half of what they could potentially do. They don't need us in real physical terms. They don't need the Dow Jones to go up. They don't need the stock market to go up. They own everything they need evolutionarily to increase their population, to decrease ours, and to monopolize the earth. And by all appearances, that is in fact what's happening. So I disagree with Ed on this, but he has good videos, so check out some of his other videos, his content. He's a smart guy. But this is a shortcoming of his worldview. I wouldn't say we're definitely going to see an elite robot take over, but we should use Bayesian analysis, weigh the possibilities, and prepare accordingly. Not putting all of our eggs in one basket, but prepare for all eventualities. That's what the elites do. So thank you guys for listening. Have a good day.